September of 2020. The majority of the students participated in purely modular distance learning, followed by purely online distance learning. Most of those unenrolled are aged 18 and above, while most of those who have attended classes are at the elementary level. The Senate has started its investigation into the impact of the pandemic on the education system and the government's plans moving forward. Jen Calimon reports to us live from Malabon to give us more details. Jen, good afternoon. Are the senators for or against the resumption of face-to-face classes this year?
Well, Charles, most senators present during today's committee hearing are in favor of the resumption of school opening, but with some reservations. For Senator Win Gatchalian, though he is in favor of school reopening, hopefully in August, and if we already have vaccines, but he urged the DepEd or the Department of Education to come up with a detailed plan regarding the pilot testing or pilot classes, because until now, it is not clear as to how and where they would implement it. As for Senator Binay, she hopes that the pilot testing will be done in areas with low to no cases of COVID-19, such as Batanes or Siquijor, to see if pilot classes will be successful. And for Senator Francis Pangilinan, he suggested to conduct the pilot classes in small number of schools in the country because of the emergence of UK variant, which will pose more danger to public. Charles?
Right, Jen, just to recall, the President did say that there would be no face-to-face classes up and until there's a vaccine available to the general public. What is the DepEd's current stance on the matter insofar as how far along or how far away we are before this can be implemented?
Yes, Charles, the Department of Education stressed the need to finally conduct face-to-face classes in school. According to Yusek Nepomuceno Malaluan, face-to-face classes can help address difficulty in assessing the development of a child. It can also mitigate technological problems since not all children in the Philippines have access to the internet, and it could also ease negative mental health impacts among children. But regarding its implementation, Charles, that will depend on the decision of the IATF and the President as well.
All right, Jen, let's parse through the numbers a bit. How many schools actually were closed due to the pandemic, and how many of these were private and how many were public schools?
Charles, DepEd data shows that 61,923 schools were closed for learners. That includes 47,188 public schools, 271 SUCs, and 14,435 private schools. Meanwhile, 929 private schools in the Philippines are not opening in school years 2020 to 2021. Charles?
Right, Jen, so the DepEd is for the implementation of face-to-face classes, but then do we have more details on precisely how they intend to do this?
Well, Charles, first of all, the Department of Education clarified that this face-to-face classes will be done only in 1,065 pilot schools in the country and not in the entire schools in the Philippines. And this will only be done under stringent conditions. There will be intermittent basis for prioritization of learners, and there will be seating arrangements. Classes will also be done probably once or twice a week, depending on the discretion of DepEd regional offices. Charles?
Right, I understand that the UNICEF had something to say about the matter. Could you tell us more about this?
Yes, Charles, the UNICEF gave the summary of the recommendations regarding opening of schools, which is divided into 3 phases. Well, these are first to start pilot classes as soon as possible in low-risk areas, modification of omnibus guidelines for community quarantine, preparation of nationwide in-person classes for school year 2021 to 2022, protection for children, for students and teachers, and continued investment and support for distant learning modalities. UNICEF also said that Indonesia, considering that they have higher cases than in our country, is already implementing face-to-face classes in pilot schools. Charles?
Right, any other noteworthy points that were discussed at the hearing earlier today?
Yes, Charles, the committee hearing is still ongoing in the Senate, but if I may just add, the Philippine Pediatric Society discussed discussed the long-term effects of distance learning to children, such as decreased motivation to learn and reduction in foundation skills. That's why they agreed to open the schools this year. Aside from this, Ating Guro Party List hopes that the DepEd could come up with a plan to provide COVID-19 immunization for teachers. Lastly, Yusek Densing of DILG said that majority of LGUs in the country are in favor of reopening the classes, whether face-to-face or blended. But at the end of the day, Charles, the IATF and the President will have to decide on this matter. Charles.
Thanks for that, Jen. That was Jen Calimon reporting live from Malabon. Pasig City Mayor Vico Soto has been named an anti-corruption champion by the U.S. State Department. Soto was the only Filipino among 12 individuals chosen from around the world for the Anti-Corruption Champions Award launched by the Biden administration. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the award recognizes leaders and innovators who demonstrate courage and impact in preventing and combating corruption. The U.S. State Department described Soto as a standard bearer for a new generation of politicians who has a new and more transparent approach to governance. Among the achievements cited by the U.S. were Soto's initiatives to avoid kickbacks, the awarding of city contracts, and the establishment of a 24/7 public information and complaints hotline. We'll be back with more stories after a quick break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Charles Lejano. Pork retailers are taking more steps to put the price ceiling's implementation to a halt. Some vendors are even eyeing to file a temporary restraining order against the price cap. Shale Francisco with the details.
Dapat sinusuportahan din kami ng gobyerno. Kasi marami na rin din nagtitinda nalulugi
Pork retailer Johnny Palad can't help but be emotional as he shares how the price ceiling cut his sales by more than half. He has no choice but to cut the salary of his workers and have them work in shifts. Johnny is just one of many vendors who are having a hard time complying with the government's price ceiling on pork and chicken products amid the rise in farm gate prices. At least 5 more markets in Manila are planning to stage a 3-day pork holiday beginning Friday. But they are warning that this won't be the last.
Ang susunod, nagpaplano sila ng 3 araw. Maaaring may magkaroon ng 1 linggo pork holiday pag nagtuloy-tuloy yung trending na pagtaas ng presyo ng baboy.
Chicken and pork vendors are now planning to launch a signature campaign that aims to halt the price ceiling. They are also looking at asking the Supreme Court to issue a temporary restraining order against DEO.
No, as long as mapuproba nila na ang profiteering and manipulation as well as monopoly ay sa hanay ng vendors, so be it. Pero kung hindi na mapuprobe yun, lalaban kami kasi kawawa naman kami.
Hog and chicken producers have formally appealed to the DA to remove the price cap.
Bumabangga ito doon sa proposal nila na dagdagan ng supply sa pamamagitan ng production and importation.
They say a suggested retail price should instead be imposed. The producers say the DA is planning to meet them regarding the matter.
Ang maganda kasi, it will follow yung law of supply and demand natin. Pagka medyo meron ng supply, mag-adjust po yung presyo, bababa ng konti. Pagka wala naman masyadong supply, maybe it's either aakyat siya ng konti.
The Agribusiness and Marketing Assistance Service of the DA is set to submit its own recommendation after a dialogue with markets around the metro. Vendors and producers are hoping that the DA will act on it before the end of the 60-day price cap, or else small producers and retailers would be forced to close. Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
Agriculture Secretary William Dar says budgetary support for the sector remains inadequate. Speaking on One News's agenda, Dar said the agriculture sector should be given a 450 billion peso budget, considering its contribution to the country's economy. The DA Secretary said the 90 billion peso budget allotted for agriculture this year isn't enough, citing the sector's 10% contribution to the country's GDP. Applying the parity principle, DAR said the agency should be given 450 billion pesos, or 10% of the 4.5 trillion peso national budget. This is to implement the agency's banner programs and to provide enough incentives for the workers in the agriculture sector.
Of course, this last 2 years, umangat nga, maraming naibigay ng Duterte administration, mas malaki na, pero hindi pa rin sapat itong paglaki ng budget sa sektor ng agrikultura.
Before the global pandemic, outdoor air pollution was linked to the deaths of as many as 9 million people globally every year. Now, 2 new studies show that COVID-19 patients are more likely to die if they live in regions with high levels of air pollution. Bloomberg's Akshat Rathir explains.
The COVID-19 pandemic has killed 2 million people in 1 year. Air pollution has been killing as many as 9 million each year. The pandemic has made us realize the importance of shared resources. The very air we breathe can sometimes kill us. Even before the new coronavirus ravaged the planet, tiny particles produced from the burning of fossil fuels and wood were killing millions of people each year. The problem of air pollution, however, has not received the kind of attention it deserves. The more scientists have studied the problem, the more alarmed they have become. Particulate matter in air pollution is so tiny that it finds its way into every part of the human body, including the brain. It then goes on to cause heart problems, strokes, asthma, lung cancer, and even pneumonia. That's also why those with higher exposure to air pollution have a higher likelihood of dying from COVID-19. There is essentially no safe level of air pollution. The solutions to tackle the problem are numerous: improving public transport, electrifying road vehicles, regulating or pricing emissions from power plants and factories, providing clean cooking fuel. All these steps will also help reduce greenhouse gas emissions and thus slow down global warming. What's more is that air pollution is also shown to affect economic productivity. Those with worse health cannot perform to the best of their abilities. So, acting on air pollution is the answer for a world in the middle of a pandemic, struggling to tackle climate change and dealing with an economic recession. Rarely are there solutions that provide such wins for multiple problems simultaneously. This is Net Zero. I'm Akshat Rathir. Follow us on Quick Take and Bloomberg.
Time now for some sizzling sports action. Vic Manuel is finally saying goodbye to Alaska. That's after the Aces signed a trade deal with Phoenix Super LPG. The Aces sent Manuel to the Fuel Masters in exchange for guard Brian Heruela and 3 draft picks. Alaska coach Jeff Carriazo told the Philippine Star that trading Manuel was a very challenging endeavor that spanned 3 weeks. But in an Instagram post, the muscle man was all praise for Alaska as he formally said farewell to his former team. Meanwhile, Phoenix coach Paulo Bugia believes that the addition of Vic Manuel will boost their team's strength and will allow Phoenix to compete with the big teams. And those are the top stories of the hour. Join Sean Yao later at 2 p.m. as we continue to monitor the day's biggest stories. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Just register for a free account at www.signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime and anywhere. I'm Charles Lejano. We're One News.